Many times when people speak about colonialism, they speak about it in past tense as if it doesn't exist anymore. But what I notice is obviously colonialism is very evident, but it's very evident in the intellectual resources of the black community. Can you speak about that, please?
Yes, colonialism, you know, it's very evident in the black community, whether we're talking about the continent of Africa and the diaspora. Wherever the diaspora is, we're dealing with the same colonialism that the continent is dealing with, and it's having a similar result, you know, on the continent and across the diaspora. For example, I work heavy in the not-for-profit space. Raps Next Foundation, Boss Up Foundation. It's a not-for-profit, and we're in the community all the time. And in this space, we're considered an under-resourced community. Black communities are considered under-resourced communities, but I disagree, right? We're heavily resourced communities. We have various resources across various levels of society. For example, hip hop. Hip hop is a cultural resource that generates about $20 billion annually, and less than 1% of the receipts from that business come back to the communities that created it, right? So that resource is being extracted from the community. So we're not under resourced, we're over extracted, right? That's really what's happening. Just like with Africa, they consider Africa under resourced, impoverished, when it's not. It's the most resourceful continent on earth in terms of manpower, wealth, and resources, right? So they've set up these extraction points to extract the resources. So Africa's not under resourced, it's over extracted. The black community throughout the diaspora is not under resourced, it's over extracted. That's the example with hip hop, but not just there. We have creative genius, we have intellectual genius, we have academic genius. The academic genius gets siphoned out of the community because we don't have the institutions developed in the community to sustain the lives of the academics and that innovative genius. So it gets siphoned out of the community by Fortune 500 corporations and all these other groups. So they're extracting the academic resource out of the community as well.
Sorry to
You know,
cut you, right? But you brought up a great point because when they usually speak about brain drain, they talk about someone in another country who comes to America, but we don't acknowledge the brain drain within our own communities, as you spoke about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, we see this happening again in various areas of the community where we have these resources. Think about it. We talk about athletes, and we're always, we're big fans of sports. We watch sports, things of that nature, but that's another resource that gets extracted out of the community when we consider 80% of all NFL players are black, 80% of all NBA players are black. Collectively, they're about a 32 plus billion dollars a year industry, with less than 1% of those business receipts coming back to the communities where these athletes come from, right? So there's another resource that's being extracted, and it happens with everything we do. The resources get extracted. We could talk about monetary resources. How much of what we spend is with other groups. You know, um, that's a resource. A monetary resource is extracted at the point of purchase. You go into a corner store in our neighborhoods, you have 250 products in the corner store, with exceptions to maybe one or two. Nothing else is black owned. We no longer own the retail in the community. Now it's owned by foreigners. The corner stores, all owned by foreigners. The distribution networks that take the products to the stores, the manufacturers that manufacture the product, none of that. So we're not producing, we're not manufacturing, we're not producing, we're not distributing, we're not retailing any of what we consume, right? So these extraction points, these are like trading posts. They set up the trading posts in the continent of Africa, and they just, and started the transatlantic slave trade or what have you. And it's the same thing. These same extraction points exist in our community, and the resources are being extracted out of the community. And this is colonialism. This is another form of colonialism. And the reason that it becomes difficult for us to overcome this colonization of our resources in the United States is because we have a falsification of consciousness. So the colonization of our minds is what's preventing that, because we perceive ourselves to be American citizens, right? So by perceiving yourself to be an American citizen, you don't see the need or the point of establishing your own life-sustaining institutions, right? Institutions that are us-centered, right? So like every other group has, right? Every other group has. You think of every other group here, each group controls some form of industry in this country, you know? We know who controls the banking industry in the United States. We know who controls sanitation industry in the United States. We know who controls the construction industry in the United States. We know who controls law enforcement in the United States. We know the Italian, the Jewish, the Irish, the East Indian. We know the parts of the industries they control in this economy, right? Our community, because we suffer from a colonized mind, a falsification of consciousness, we don't see the point in doing it.